I think I might have stumbled on one of the most interesting conversations that I've ever had. I can't believe how much time I'm putting into this and it's still staying relevant. I'm, of course, talking about the DMT versus God comparison. So, excuse me, I should be in bed right now. Woke up in the middle of the night just to read my YouTube notifications, and I got this big, long email saying, if I want a trip, not DMT. If I want a comparable experience to real God, DMT. And I'm going to deconstruct that now. So, move my microphone. First of all, the thing I'm going to say is, although I haven't tried DMT, so I can't break down the actual experience of being on it, I can say this. It lasts no longer than 1 hour. And that's a complete newbie with a massive dose who hasn't eaten anything and isn't interrupted. You're not going to get more than an hour out of it, right? So for me, that's how long a buzz is going to last on a drug. It doesn't last very long. It's up and then down and then gone, right? So that's what makes it addictive, the dose curve. So it is, obviously people are going to say it's great, it's like a connection with God, and that's what heroin users say. I'm not saying DMT is like heroin, but what I am saying is a drug that goes up and is good and then comes straight down and disappears is not comparable to a relationship with a real God, which is like this all the time for your whole life, right? It lasts much longer than an hour. It lasts every single second of your life. Once you've realised it's there in the background the whole time, and then once you realise it's there, it's just, you've clicked onto it. It doesn't go back down again. It's just always up because it's a real life thing. So that would be my first point of call to compare the two. And then the other one would obviously be that it's a real life experience, right? So the difference between a real life experience and something like DMT is DMT cannot physically affect the outside real world, right? Like me doing this, I can feel it. My head is real. This is real. Bang, I can feel it, right? So DMT can't do that. DMT is like in here. It's a neurotransmitter. DMT is a block of smokable synthetic neurotransmitter. It floods your brain with a similar neurotransmitter to one that you might have naturally during birth and during dreams and, when you sleep. So that's why you have to be asleep for DMT to affect you. It literally is a neurotransmitter, which is a sleep chemical. So it cannot affect anything in the real world. There's no, you could have as much DMT as you want, and it is not going to be able to affect anything outside of your head in your dreams. Whereas an experience with real God is like, it could happen to me now. It could literally do this. It can, I'm not saying it will move things like a fucking poltergeist, but it has an effect on the real world, and you have an effect on the real world while it's there affecting you, because it's not a neurotransmitter. It's an actual unique being of spirit, God. Like the one that you get told about when you're young and you're skeptical and you don't believe about, and that people. It's difficult for me to explain. Watch all my other videos if you really are that interested in knowing the difference between what you've described, DMT, and the actual indescribable joyous feeling of having a real relationship between you and the creator God, the only one, if you ask me. Then there's no way you can get around it. If you've had DMT and you wish to compare that to God, then you can't unless you have a real God experience. That's the reason why you're likening the two. You've never had a real God experience. So the nearest thing that you can liken it to in your head is a drug, DMT, because it's similar to something that you have in your own brain. But like I say, it's a block of synthetic neurotransmitter. Do you know what that means? Well, you will know what that means, but for those of you that don't know what that means, a neurotransmitter is a hormone type chemical that goes into your brain, sits on the end of one of your neurotransmitters like this, and actually affects how that neurotransmitter signal gets to your brain. So it is literally a drug that affects your brain, and you if you're not asleep and you open your eyes, that's how it affects the real world. It puts visions into your view, but they're not real. Like whatever you see, no one else can see. It doesn't affect them because it isn't really there. It's just that your brain is tricked into thinking it is. So for instance, if you see a fish stop in front of you and freeze in real time and you're going, whoa, like you would if you saw that, nobody else can see it. I could be sat next to you and I'd be completely unaware of it. And there isn't actually a fish there for real. So if you're hungry, you can't pluck that fish out the air and cook it, stick it on a shallow fry with a bit of olive oil. It will not. It's not real. That's the difference. It is not real. It doesn't affect reality apart from up here. Whereas real God does. Like I was telling you, he physically controls and affects reality. And the only reason that I don't demand or ask that God affects the real world in a bigger way for me, i.e. make, like the Matrix, make a gun appear in my hand or something like that, he's not going to do that. He does affect things in the real life, but not, you can't just ask for anything you want, he's not going to make you that spoiled. But anyway, I'm not going to go into that because it would take too long. So I just wanted to make the point that I'm going to read your post again, right? Because you've obviously spent a lot of time, invested in writing it for me to understand. So, and I haven't done DMT and I'm not likely to. So I would like to understand the hallucinogenic experience. But I have an issue with you comparing it to a relationship with real God, because a DMT trip is going to last you an hour and is not real, does not affect the real world. It just happens it's a dreamlike state, like I keep saying. That's it. It is a dream that happens to you that is so vivid and relevant to you because it's created by your own brain, that once you had one, you think it's that good that you would liken it with what you think a relationship with God's going to be like. But a relationship with God lasts your entire life and affects everything in the real world. That's the main difference that I want you to get into your head about the two. Is one is a temporary, dreamlike experienced hallucination that wears off and doesn't affect anything. It physically cannot affect anything in the real world apart from your mind through the hallucinations. Whereas a real relationship with God is a lifelong experience that doesn't just affect the things in your head, like a hallucination, but also affects directly the physical world. It's like I'm doing this to prove a point that DMT can't do this. God can. Not only for 1 hour, it will be the whole rest of your life. So, without wanting to wax too lyrically, because we're already coming up to the 10-minute mark for this video, that is the principal difference, is that God affects you in a real way that other people can see, that doesn't require you to flood your brain with a synthetic neurotransmitter to simulate what happens in a near-death experience, and then you'll feel sick afterwards if you have too much, or you might have a headache, or whatever, but it's going to wear off. A real relationship with God is like a real relationship with a person. Like if you know me for the rest of your life, the effect I could have on you and your life and your possessions or anything in the real world, that's what you're going to get with a relationship with God. Imagine he's like a human with a body. He can affect the real world. He can pick things up and throw them, or he can change things. And DMT is just incapable. DMT cannot do that. It is just able to affect what's in your head, right? So that's it really. Thanks for listening. I won't wax lyrically too much. I won't go on about it too much, but I can't be any more clear than that before I get myself off to bed, that the difference between a real life experience that lasts forever, beyond your life and throughout your life and probably before your life, that's what I believe anyway, that is God. And DMT is like you smoke it, the neurotransmitter hits your brain, and then it dissolves within 1 hour, and it cannot affect anything outside of that dream. It's incapable of affecting the real world. So if you want a really good experience of God, you cannot get it through DMT. DMT simulates what it might be like, but it isn't. It isn't like that at all. That's just that's how your tiny experience can quantify it with a DMT trip. But trust me, the two things could not be more different. Anyway, so I'm going to go back to bed now, and I hope that this has shed some light on the matter, and that we can continue this discussion tomorrow when the sun's up and have a little bit more time, because I really think you're missing out. Like, I'm not saying DMT is not good. It's obviously amazing, right? Even though it's illegal, I'm not going to do it because of that. If I could, I know I'd enjoy it, but I would enjoy it as a hallucination, which is going to last an hour. I would not enjoy it every single day for the rest of my life. I wouldn't be praying to DMT in times of strife or need or just isolation or anything. You know, I could be happy and want to report that. I wouldn't be putting my hands together and praying towards DMT, and nobody else would. Whereas with people that have met God, and there's millions of them across the world, you know, Christians especially, there's a lot, we would pray to this entity, this God, because he listens and he cares and he can affect our real life. So if I pray for if I pray for strength, I will physically feel stronger from it. Whereas if I pray to DMT for strength, it's going to make no difference whatsoever. It physically cannot affect the real world past what's in my head. So, I'm repeating myself now anyway, so I'm going to get off to bed. But thanks for listening. We will catch up probably tomorrow and the next day. And I will keep doing this forever. You know, the more people tell me that DMT is equal to God, the more I'm going to reveal their ignorance of that relationship with God. It is nothing like it at all. Like I say, one thing lasts forever and affects the real physical world in a real physical, tangible way with real physical objects that can be witnessed by other people and doesn't require to be on any drugs. If anyone walking past saw it, they'll all see the same thing as what you will see in the real world. Whereas with DMT, everybody on earth could walk past you and not one of them is going to be able to see what's going on inside your head, because you're the only person who's got flooded your brain with neurotransmitters. Everyone else wouldn't be able to. So that's all. I'll probably have to make more videos, but that'll do for now. So signing off. Good night, guys. Enjoy yourselves.